Is that a trick question? This man was a bona fide scrub. Bona fide scrub.
This dude, I believe he's a bona fide superstar right now.
Right. Oh, well, of course, it's all about winning, baby.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of the Star and Scrub NBA podcast. Here with Lee, as usual, on this Thursday night. We're going to talk about the Northwest Division. Are you excited for this one, Lee, or is it a bit of a down division for you, do you think?
Probably a little bit of a down division compared to the ones we've been talking about before, but I reckon some sneaky players and lots of storylines are going to be in and out of this division. So do you care much for this division at all?
I don't know why I just said, asked you if it's going to be a down division, because if you said no, kind of semi like you did, then it just starts off to a depressing start. So this is not a great start to the podcast. But before we actually get into these teams, we've got the Nuggets, Timberwolves, Thunder, Blazers, and Jazz. So if you're a fan of any of those teams, or as we know, a fan of the NBA in general, then stay tuned. But first of all, just wanted to quickly discuss the John Wall situation. Put up a post yesterday about it. So they've basically, he and the Houston Rockets have basically mutually agreed, I guess, to part ways. He'll stay with the team. He'll go to training camp. I guess if he's still on the team at the beginning of the season, he'll sit on the bench. But he will not see 1 second of action on the court for the Houston Rockets ever again. Not that it was a massive, great Houston Rocket career, obviously, involved in that trade last season. But have you got any thoughts on if there's any possibility whatsoever that John Wall can be traded? Because that contract, 2 years, kind of, is it 91 million
something
or something?
like that, yeah.
Like something ludicrous. Is there a team out there that could actually trade for this guy? Or I don't know what's going to happen, because they're not talking about a buyout right now. So I don't know.
That's a hefty contract. And I think you and I talked even last season, the three worst things you'd want on someone: overpaid, injury prone, and old. And he ticks all three of those boxes. But I'd seen a lot of criticism about him having that contract. But when he got that contract, he was pushing one of the best point guards in the league, 2010, all defensive. So it's going to be really hard, I reckon, for a team to happily go for it. Because I think we would have heard of something by now if there was offers, but it doesn't sound like it. I can't imagine you can think of a franchise that'd be happy to pay 90+ million to an injury-prone old point guard.
Yeah, well, I mean, is he that old? I don't think he's that old. He's like early 30s. That's not old. It's just he seems old because he hasn't played for so long and he's had all these injuries. Well, I mean, he's played, but not played at that elite level that he had back in the day with the Wizards. So he's not really that old. What's his role going forward, I guess, in the NBA? I think there's a few teams out there. The one that I think springs to mind is the Clippers. That they've got a few contracts there that are debatable that you could actually stack to try and get to John Wall. I speak of like Luke Kennard on 4 years, $64 million. Who else is there? Ibaka's there, depending on how bad they think his back issues are moving forward. Yep. Marcus Morris is another player that's making that $15-16 million mark. Eric Bledsoe they've just brought in, who I think's on 17.5 this season. So there you've got four contracts kind of thing who you can stack together to get to John Wall. So the Clippers could bring in John Wall, and I don't think the Rockets, they're obviously not playing the guy, so they're not going to be asking for a whole lot in return. If they can just get off that contract without actually having to buy him out, I think that's a bonus. Great. Yeah, that's a bonus. So they're not going to be asking for the world whatsoever. So if the Clippers can kind of stack contracts, and the other thing is who's the Clippers point guard at the moment? Reggie Jackson, I guess. I still have John Wall ahead of Reggie Jackson, to be honest. John Wall played some reasonable basketball last season, so I have him there. Is there any other team that you think should be interested in John Wall?
I did see some ties to like Miami and stuff. Who we're fine. We've got our point guard, but the contract's the hardest part about it. But I'd love to see him in at the Dallas Mavericks as someone that can help Luka, because he can take some of the ball handling duties away from him. Obviously, health pending, but John Wall, as I said, he's 6'5". Maybe I'm being dramatic about the age thing, but it's more point guards tend to go down unless they're elite level shooters like the Steph Currys or Lillards of the world, or all-time great shooters. But if you're an athletic type of point guard and you can't shoot, it's not a great recipe, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess the problem is with John Wall is because of that contract, because there's no talk of a buyout situation, it's pretty limited to teams that will take him on, because no one's going to take on that contract to be a backup point guard, to be a six-man. You're not going to pay a six-man $45 million. So there's a lot of teams out there that have their starting point guard in place and don't need a starting point guard. And there's other ones that, even though John Wall might be a better player, there might be some younger teams out there that are happy to go with their younger point guards because they're developing kind of thing. So there isn't a whole lot of teams out there that I think would be willing to trade for John Wall. The Clippers are probably one. The Mavericks are probably another. But then again, like, if the Mavericks were to get John Wall, they're probably having to give up Porzingis kind of thing. Is that what you want to be doing? We all know
one bad contract for another.
Well, yeah, and I'd probably prefer the upside of Porzingis, to be honest, but that's just me.
I think obviously not the entire reason, but part of the reason why Dennis Schroeder and stuff I don't reckon got those big contracts is most teams have their guard anyway. They've got their full guard, whether it's a young one upcoming or established. So I think that just the market for a point guard, a number one point guard, might be a bit trickier. Aaron Gordon is the other guy that has been big news in the past couple of days. $92 million, 4 years he signed. First thought when you saw it, when you thought he got that big contract.
After he played for the Nuggets, well, after how he played for the Nuggets in the playoffs, I thought it was way overs. Really, what's that? 23 a season? Yeah,
something like that.
That's not. Again, are you almost? It's like you're almost paying that on potential. But to me, Aaron Gordon's got to a point where he's always had this potential, and now we've just got to understand that this is who he is. Like, don't expect him to be anything more than what he's been in the past. And you look at that athleticism, you look at that skill set, and you think he can be so much more. But there's some players that they just reach a certain level, and that's who they are for the rest of their career. And there's no harm in that. But there obviously is a limit to how much you should be paying those blokes. And $23 million to me is a bit too much. But anyway.
Well, Denver, obviously, I was very critical of Denver losing Jeremy Grant. Do you reckon they almost regret that badly, and they see him as the next closest thing to 6'9", do-it-all, versatile?
Yeah, I think Denver have been really good with a lot of their transactions in the last few years. I think that's one that's probably been a little bit disappointing because they could have re-signed Grant. I think they offered him the money. He just wanted to go to the Pistons for a larger role.
Yeah, bigger role, that's right.
Yeah, but ideally for the Nuggets, I mean, I'd probably prefer... Who would you prefer out of Jeremy Grant and Aaron Gordon? Is it Jeremy Grant?
Yeah.
He's got so ideally for them, they would have kept Jeremy Grant, and then it would have also meant that they could have kept the pieces that they actually traded for Aaron Gordon, which was Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, who's a good young player. So you're asking, not only are you asking me who I'd prefer out of Grant and Gordon, you're asking me would I rather Grant, Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, or Aaron Gordon. So that's just the one where they got it a little bit wrong, but it was probably out of their hands because Jeremy Grant wanted to go and play a bigger role in Detroit. But we're talking about the Denver Nuggets, so let's start with them in the Northwest Division. So we'll go with their ins and outs. So Jeff Green comes in. They've re-signed Will Barton, JaMychal Green, and Austin Rivers. Out goes the veteran Paul Millsap and JaVale McGee off to Phoenix as well. My question to you with Denver is, which player is most important to them, do you think, winning a championship or at least getting into championship contention where they're making maybe the NBA Finals kind of thing?
Denver, first of all, I just have to give my props to the season they had. Probably not when I said they'd make it to the Western Conference Finals and they'd beat the Phoenix Suns. I think I said, Denver in 5 and they ended up getting close to swept. But I think Michael Porter Jr. is the key to their success. I remember his high school highlights and I thought this is the second coming of KD, 6'10", 7-foot wingspan. Like the way how high he shoots, he never ever gets blocked, and he averaged 19. Like obviously he had injury issues at the start, and he slipped in the draft because of it. But like he's averaged 19 points. He shot 77% around the rim as well, so he's got like a 3-level scoring, and he looks just more and more comfortable with the role he's in. And I think obviously you tend to criticise his defense, but I think that will come in time. So I think for him, the potential that he has, and just that become almost overwhelming because you've got Jokic as an offensive force in itself. Jamal Murray, you can't really stay from him, but I think he would take them to that next level where you just be a pick your poison type of team. I mean, Jokic is down low. You got Jamal Murray on the perimeter, and then obviously there's Michael Porter Jr. So I think him I've probably got him as picked as probably my most improved as well for this year. So I'm very much just excited for him to be a big part of their championship roster. Do you share my sentiment?
I love that you responded like that, because when I wrote it down, I kind of expected you just to be like, is that a trick question? Of course, it's Nikola Jokic. But I completely agree. That was going to be my answer, is Michael Porter Jr., because I look at this team and I just think, is Jokic getting that much better? He's coming off an MVP kind of thing. I think he can improve, but the biggest area for him to improve is performing at the end, the pointy end of the season, come the NBA Finals or the Conference Finals again, kind of thing. But that doesn't help him necessarily get there. And what's going to help him get there is Michael Porter Jr. He's the last piece to this puzzle where, as you speak about, you've got your big man in Jokic, who's an MVP caliber player. You've got Murray, who's unfortunately out injured, but he's a rising player in the backcourt there. And then Michael Porter Jr. I always speak about these 6'8" to 6'11" wing guys who have that combination of athleticism and skill. He's got that, and to me, he's the player. If he can become an all-star caliber player, which I think he's got the potential and the talent to be, then for me, he's the most important piece to Denver trying to become a genuine title contender. Whether it will happen this season, obviously with Murray still out, I'm not sure, but it should provide the opportunity for him with Murray out from at least the majority of the season. It should provide the opportunity for him to try and turn into, as you say, you might have him for most improved, but if he does take that leap and is close to most improved, that would probably mean he might be close to an all-star berth kind of thing. So it should provide the opportunity for him at the very least with Murray out.
I just love this almost sense that I get from him. Just listen to these numbers. So after Jamal Murray went down, obviously he got more of a role, but he averaged 23 points on the shooting splits were 55% from the field, 44% from three, and then 85% from the free throw line. So he is very happy to take this role and be that sort of player. And I think, as you said, Jamal Murray's going to be out. All the defensive attention goes to Jokic. So I think, he's poised for a big year. And obviously they've got Murray at the 1 and then Jokic at the 5. But I want to, looking at the other pieces, as we just talked about, they signed Aaron Gordon. Do you think this is the championship roster? They got pretty damn close in the bubble. Do you think with the moves they've made so far, they've added Jeff Green, do you think this could be a championship roster or still a few pieces away?
Not this season, because I just don't think Murray's loss just takes him out of title contention. That's what happens when you have a great player. Well, he's not a great player, but a very, very good player like that, and you take him out. It's very difficult to win games of basketball regularly, and especially win an NBA championship. You've seen it with my Golden State Warriors, Klay Thompson out for 2 years. You just can't be close to contending for a title when you've got a player on that much money who's that good out of your team. At the end of the day, this is a 5-on-5 sport. It's not, a game of footy where there's 22 blokes on each team where you can kind of cover the loss of a star player as much. That just doesn't happen in the NBA. You need your best players out there. Murray's not going to be out there for the majority of the season. And even if they, I'm expecting them to make the playoffs still, but even if he comes back for the playoffs, he's not going to necessarily be acclimatized. He's going to start with a pretty heavy minutes restriction, I'd imagine, even maybe by playoff time. So for me, not this season, but next season. In terms of the roster, I guess, well, again, it comes down to Michael Porter Jr. And they had a choice here, I think, between do we cash in on Michael Porter Jr. and try and go get another star, or do they trust Michael Porter Jr. to become that star? They chose Michael Porter Jr. There are options there where they could have put Michael Porter Jr. in a trade package for James Harden, for example, and gone after a Harden type kind of thing and put him next to Murray and Jokic. They decided not to do that. They saw this guy at 6'10", long, really skilled wing, and thought, he's going to be our player that can, along with Jokic and Murray, carry us to hopefully a championship. Now, whether he can reach that level, as we've been speaking about, I think he's got the potential and talent to definitely do so, but the proof's going to be in the pudding at the end of the day.
I agree with that, and I also don't think they're at championship roster level. And I think what I'd want to see is, sounds corny saying it, but like tough guys. I'd love to see the Markieff Morrises of the world, the Rondos of the world, the Pat Bev. I'd love to see some older grizzled vets, even like a PJ Tucker on their roster, because they are quite young. I don't know who has won a championship on that roster at all. I don't think anyone has. Jeff Green's a step in the right direction, but I think for a team that young, even if they're literally just a locker room guy, I think, a few more tougher type of veterans who have been and done it before and have actually reached the heights, I think would be a great step in the right direction. You said the Aaron Gordon contract was over, though. You're not sure if he's going to be that guy.
Yeah, he's not like... He's okay for a fourth player on a team, I guess, if he's behind Murray when he's back healthy, Porter Jr. and Jokic. But at $23 million, I don't really want to pay my fourth guy $23 million. I don't know why I'm saying that, because the Warriors are paying, Andrew Wiggins as a fourth guy at $30 million. So, there's some teams that do it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. Let's have a look. Let's give our kind of predictions for them there. Over-under line is 47.5. Have you got them going over that or under that? And where have you got them in the Western Conference standings?
I've got them going over that, and I've got them second in the West. I reckon they're a great regular season
even without Murray.
team. Even without Murray, I think they're going to be... because I want to see Aaron Gordon healthy as well, and I love the Jeff Green addition there as well. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to have that as well. I can tell from your tone, you're quite sure. How low did you have them?
If you had them second with Jamal Murray, I'm perfectly happy with that. There's no worries. I can't see them, because I look at that roster, and until Porter Jr. takes a jump, I look at that team and I just think, outside of Jokic, who scares me? Who do I think is going to put up 30 on me, kind of thing? So if I can just plan my defense around Jokic, which is so difficult because he's elite at basically all aspects of the game in terms of not only scoring himself, but obviously his passing and playmaking is probably the best we've ever seen out of the center position. But
True.
Who else scares me? Who else do I think, oh yeah, he's going to put up 30? Now, Michael Porter Jr. might get to that point, but until he does, until I see it on a nightly basis consistently, I can't put them that high without Jamal Murray. So I've got them sixth, which is still making the playoffs. They should be solid. Yeah, they should be solidified there, but I'm sorry, I just don't have them as a... So you don't have them as a championship contender, but you think they're going to be a great regular season team and finish second.
Fantastic regular. When's Jamal Murray set to come back? Isn't it close, like around mid-season?
Well, I'm thinking later, kind of.
Even later.
I'd say past the All-Star break. That's just, I don't know, but I'm remembering he did his ACL. If we say it's 12 months from an ACL, then I think it's probably closer to February, March kind of thing than it is the start of the year necessarily. But yeah.
Well, I'm rolling my dice on Porter Jr. making a huge, even bigger leap. From what I saw in the second half of the season when Jamal Murray went down, I think he is poised for a massive breakout season. But wow,
Fair enough. Second versus sixth. That's probably the widest gap we may have had in these predictions so far. So we'll see if you've got any thoughts on where you think the Denver Nuggets will finish. Who's got it wrong out of Lee and I? Let us know across social media. But you're going the overs. I'm going the unders probably, but it's a no bet for me. Next up, we'll get into the Minnesota Timberwolves. Alrighty, the Minnesota Timberwolves, always a strange franchise for me because they have this culture of losing. I'm sorry to just say it how it is. That is what they have. They have a culture of losing, really. Been a pretty poor franchise for quite a while now. But they do have some talent on that roster, and I think that's undeniable. The ins and outs for them, Patrick Beverley comes in with Taurean Prince, and the outs go Jarrett Culver, Ed Davis, and Ricky Rubio. Their over-under line is 33.5. They've got kind of, I don't know, I don't really want to call it a big three. A semi kind of medium big three with Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Edwards, who had a really good rookie season. I think they're a team that should be heavily involved in trying to add Ben Simmons because I think they need a defensive element to that. Cat as a big man isn't a great defender. D'Lo isn't guarding anyone on the perimeter. Anthony Edwards will wait and see. I think they need to try and get in on the Ben Simmons sweepstakes. If they could add Ben Simmons to those three without giving any of them up, then I think they're a genuine playoff contender. But my question for you, I guess, is where do you see the Timberwolves at? And just a more soul question around who do you think is more important between Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards? If you were the Warriors, the Timberwolves GM, I don't know, I'm just wearing a Warriors jersey and anyway.
That's what it is.
If you were the Timberwolves GM, would you prefer, if you had to keep just one of those two players, would you keep the more experienced Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards going into his second season?
Well, in terms of your first question as to where they're at, I see it's very similar to what we talked about last year. We said they're quite a soft franchise. They don't really have any leadership. They're pretty easy to beat up on, and I don't see any difference from that. They didn't re-sign anyone. Patrick Beverley is like, for his antics and stuff, he's not like a franchise changer. I'm still going to stick with Cat though as the most important player. I think for his skill set, he's actually, when you look at his numbers, he's like a historically good big man in terms of shooting. And his rookie season, he started off well. And I think, he can have more of an impact on a game with his shot blocking, with his rebounding. I think he can learn playmaking, and I think he just needs tougher leadership around him. He's got no leadership from his front office, from his coach, obviously veterans around him. So, and Ant Edwards, he's incredibly exciting, incredibly funny sort of guy. I've seen some of his stuff on social media, but at the end of the day, as you know, I think shooting guards are quite limited in terms of how much they can impose themselves on a game. So, and Karl Anthony Towns is a big man you can keep on the floor for 48 minutes, or at least towards the end of a game anyway. And I think that's we see it pretty heavily in the playoffs. So, I think Karl Anthony Towns. Do you share my? Do you think he's just as important? He's more important, or the same?
I think Cat's probably more important. But how long are we going to go here as with Karl Anthony Towns as the best player on the Timberwolves, where they're no good? Like, how long are we waiting? We waited for a little bit, so obviously Cat's really good friends with Devin Booker. We waited a little bit, with Devin Booker. CP3 came in as kind of that 1-2 punch in that backcourt. All of a sudden, Booker really steps up as well, and they make the NBA Finals and nearly win the championship. We talk about someone like Zach Levine, who puts up great numbers at the Bulls, and he's been kind of known as an empty calories guy, a guy who gets buckets and puts up points and stats on a bad team. And Karl Anthony Towns is the same. He's a very, very good player, but as you say, there is this, I guess, perception that he's a little bit soft, and he hasn't been able to lead his team to the playoffs. So how long are we giving him, do you think?
I think you give him plenty of time. I'm trying to find the exact year, but remember when Jimmy Butler was there? And just how different of a franchise they were. Cat played, his numbers maybe weren't ridiculously different, but he just looked and seemed like a different player because he had that tough leadership around him. And I think you're one of those players away. I would have loved to see a Kyle Lowry go there. I would have loved to see, Jimmy Butler's not leaving South Beach anyway, but I think all it takes is one of those players, give them long enough, and I think he can be one of those players. So I love him as a base, his skill set. He's still quite young as well. He's still under contract for some years, and he hasn't made any indications that he hates Minnesota or wants to leave, at least at this stage anyway. So are you thinking of pulling the pin, or?
Oh, I'm not thinking. No, I just think you need to put someone around you. I think Simmons would be the perfect option there, as that defensive-minded sort of player next to him. He's one of the great, shooters from the center position we've ever seen in the league. He's got extraordinary talent, but I don't know. It's a tough one. I think I probably agree with you that you can keep going with him as your best player, but you've got to try and find some more pieces around him, I guess, to put in place.
Well, I think you might have almost answered this question, because obviously disgruntled stars are popping up everywhere. As Harden last year, Simmons at this stage. Karl Anthony Towns, how long do you think he has left in terms of before he starts demanding trades, or do you think he's next?
Yeah, I think it'll be a while, because they literally made that trade for D'Angelo Russell basically because he's best mates with Karl Anthony Towns, and Cat wanted him there. So the fact they've got D'Lo there, I can't see, if we get to a stage where there's another 2 years of losing where they don't make the playoffs and the front office shows a complete ineptitude to get other pieces around him, then maybe we get to that situation. But with D'Lo there, with Anthony Edwards obviously coming up, and we'll see what he can do. I still think there's enough, I guess, positives going around the Timberwolves franchise at the moment to at least keep Cat there. But we'll see how they go. Their over-under line's 33.5. Did you have them over under that, and where'd you have them sitting?
Probably a no bet, because I'm not too sure with that team. I had them finishing 11th though. I don't think that's any different from where they finished last year. Do you have, what was over under or no bet?
No bet for me. I maybe have, if I was going to say, I might have them over. Look, I think they're a no bet more so because I genuinely think of the teams that could get Ben Simmons. I think the Timberwolves are probably in close to prime position, if I had to say one team kind of thing. So if you get Ben Simmons in during the regular season, whatever you want to say about Ben Simmons come playoff time, he can win you games of basketball in the regular season. He's shown an ability, I think, to do that. So if they were to get Ben Simmons early-ish in the season, then I like that 33.5 bet. Great, but that's just a wait-and-see game. What if at the moment? So for me, it's a no bet, and I had them 10th. So similar position. There's some talent there, as I said, with Cat and with Anthony Edwards and with D'Lo. If they can get some health, is another big thing for them. If they get a full season of health, maybe they'll go close to kind of getting involved in that play-in tournament. But other than that, yeah, I think they've got to make another move at some point. But anyway, next up, we'll get into another team that we think, I can imagine you agree that they probably won't be seeing playoff action, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder, with their abundance of picks going forward.
As you said, another team that probably won't be looking at playoffs anytime soon is the Oklahoma City Thunder, with their hundreds of draft picks. Big in Josh Giddey, Australian number 6 pick. Derek Favors, again, God, he moves teams a lot, that bloke. SGA got signed close to nearly, I think his contract will be up to $200 million with incentives, so props to him. Mike Muscala got it out. Moses Brown over the Celtics. Al Horford also to the Celtics as well. It's a lot that I have to say about. They've got heaps of picks, and as we know, there are plenty of teams that have tried this just overhaul, got rid of their entire roster, and some have failed miserably with it. And my first question to you was, how do OKC avoid this? Because the process itself, I don't think it's worked out with the amount of picks and stuff that have failed out and stuff. So how do OKC avoid that, in your opinion, if you were the GM or whatever?
Yeah, Sam Presti, I guess it's a meme now, how many first-round picks and picks in general that he's been able to acquire over the next 5-6 drafts kind of thing. It's absolutely crazy. But I think he's got that many now that he needs to actually stop taking the piss and actually use them for something at some point going down the track. Now, I guess from his point of view, he can just hold the line and basically just stay with the attitude that, hey, we've got this many first-round picks coming up in the next 5 or 6 drafts, that if we can just even hit on 25%, like 1 out of every 4 of our first round picks, then we're almost going to have a full roster of really good players kind of thing. Or if he says, hey, if I just get 2 of these 20 first round picks, or however many they've got, if I get 2 of them to turn into like stars, then we're set kind of thing. Like that's probably his attitude. But I think that at some point when a player becomes available, they've got to start using those picks to get a more, not an experienced player, but maybe someone who is 5-6 years into the league, who you can partner with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like Ben Simmons. I think is a perfect example. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think Philly want an absolute glut of picks. That they don't want that. But I think that the Thunder at some point, if there's a player that is 5-6 years into his NBA career, they need to pull the trigger, because at the end of the day, you've got all these picks and there's only 15 blokes on a roster. Like, at some point you're going to have to bundle up these picks to try and get a really good player. And I think they can do that. They've obviously got ridiculous amount of salary. Like they've kind of got rid of all those players that they brought in to basically get first round picks. They obviously took Kemba off the Celtics. He never played, but remember what they did? It was with Chris Paul kind of thing when they traded Westbrook. They did it with Horford, just absorbing contracts, I guess. They kind of don't have any of those players on the roster anymore, so I'm not sure if they're kind of fully committing to giving plenty of minutes to their younger players. How did you see it in terms of, obviously, as you say, trying to prevent a repeat of trust the process, where the 76ers got all these lottery picks and all these high-end talent and have basically been left with Embiid and a Ben Simmons situation, which is not panning out well?
Put it lightly, I think you need to be on the phone constantly. What you just said, I reckon you stop your hauling of picks now.
Yeah.
And literally every day calling, even be ambitious. Lakers, what do you want for LeBron? Seriously,
oh, come on. Don't be...
too far with that as well. But I've seen what the cost of hesitancy does. And that's what I point to the Boston Celtics when I look at the cost of hesitancy. I feel like they've had so many opportunities over the years to get the Butlers, the Beal, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis. but they hesitated too much. And you're OKC, you're not a big market, so for you to get players to stay in there is not to just be there and stay there. It's quite a big thing. So I think almost calling consistently, and who knows, you might just strike lucky one day and you just find that, hey, someone's disgruntled or someone's not happy with their situation at the moment. So I think you've got enough, mate. That's enough. And I think maybe even someone like the teams that have stalled. You and I were talking last week. The teams that are in that 7 to 10 range, they're not going to the playoffs or the Eastern Conference Finals or anything like that. But they're not getting number one picks. It's constantly calling them, looking and talking to their stars. So don't hesitate. I reckon start making those calls now, because I think let Boston heed warning from Boston. I think.
Yeah. I think at some point they're just going to have to say, look, we've got our young pieces in place. Let's kind of go all in, kind of thing, and try and make a move up the Western Conference standings at the end of the day. That I think they're probably going to finish low enough again where they can get another, maybe it's at least a top 5 pick, I'd say, next draft kind of thing. So they're going to have an abundance of young talent to go with their picks. At some point, they're just going to have to kind of cash in on their picks if they can. From an Australian perspective, we obviously had Was It Giddy on the podcast, about a month, 6 weeks ago now. It was absolutely fantastic. Go check that out if you haven't already. Let's just talk about Josh Giddey for a second. Now, my question for you is, what do you define as a good season for Josh Giddey playing for a team that we expect to be kind of lowly ranked in the Western Conference? What do you see from him coming into this season?
I think he's going to a great team first and foremost, where he can make mistakes, where he can play as much as he wants. And I think when SGA's off the bench or the SGA's having an off night, he'll actually be given the ball handling duties as well. He's got that. That's one of his best traits. I'd love to see him, I guess in a perfect world, show the other elements to his game, because obviously his old man was telling us that he shot the lights out when he was doing some training things as well. He's long as well, so I'm sure he can do disruptive deflections and stuff. So I'd love for him to show his other sides of his style, because I love slow-mo Karl Anderson. I think he is a great piece on NBA teams, and I would love Josh Giddey to be a more athletic and a better passing slow-mo Karl Anderson. So showing the outside game, showing the high IQ, kind of almost bringing his value up in a way as well beyond that. So what do you see? What do you want to see from?
Well, I want to see a higher potential than slow-mo Karl Anderson. I get the comparison, but if I'm the Thunder and I've taken this guy pick 6, I want a bit more than Karl Anderson kind of thing. And he obviously plays a different position, but I understand where you're kind of getting it from. Look, I think in terms of, I guess, a statistical line across the season, I don't know, maybe 12, 5 and 5. Maybe. I don't know. It's a tough one. What I want to see is, I guess, the development and how good he could be going forward, because I look at that backcourt with him and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I just think that is the kind of prototypical backcourt of the future, where you've got a 6'8" guy in Giddey and a 6'6" guy in Gilgeous-Alexander. Tall, can both handle the ball, can get to the rim. Now, the shooting's probably the one aspect at the moment from both players that may be a little bit debatable, but if they both turn into reasonable shooters, you got a 6'8" guy and a 6'6" guy in that backcourt. I think that's the prototypical modern backcourt kind of thing. We always talk about like the Portland Trailblazers with Dame and CJ, and just the fact that come playoff time, they're just too short. They're too small. That backcourt's too small. The Thunder there with those two guys have the chance to have an extremely good, in fact, great backcourt for the next 10 to 12 years kind of thing. So that's what I'm kind of looking at from a Thunder perspective.
I didn't even think about that, but just imagine SGA in the half court. He can do the ball handling duties, but Josh Giddey, we've seen it in the NBL already, just grab the rebound and just push in transition. So I think that's just going to be exciting to watch, and certainly hope... it's kind of exciting actually to see this many Australians going to the NBA with such versatile skill sets, and I think it's going to be. But I've still got them 14th though. You got
them 14th. Okay, so I got them 15th. I got them 15th. I got them last. And there's no harm in that. As I said, I would be trying to get another top 3, top 5 pick. Let the young guys like Giddey play through their mistakes and give them 25, 30 minutes a night. Obviously, you don't want to burn them out. But there's no harm in that. And so for me, line is at 21.5. It's a no bet, surely.
No bet. Yeah, I've got a no bet. But it's kind of, I think it's good to almost have some sort of optimism, because I look at like some teams that are closer to the bottom and I don't see any hope in them. But like Thunder, Sam Presti's at least respected from what I can read and see in the league, around the league. So I think, yeah, it's actually 15th. I wouldn't be too sad if I was an OKC fan. You've got a bright future and good leadership around it. So.
Yeah. There's a plan in place there, and
that's right.
Yeah, and where that leads, who knows? It's a wait and see game. But yeah, I don't think there's any harm in finishing last and trying to get another top 3 pick to go with SGA, to go with Giddey and the likes. But next up, we've got the Portland Trailblazers and their interesting situation with their superstar Damian Lillard.
Portland Trailblazers have been in the news since the playoffs really finished, actually. The ins through the draft: Greg Brown III, Marquise Chris, Ben McLemore, Larry Nance Jr., which I really liked, Patrick Patterson, Dennis Smith Jr., who's a guy I'm very disappointed he hasn't worked out. Yeah, Tony Snell and Cody Zeller. They re-signed Norman Powell, who's playing really good. The outs, a few outs actually: Carmelo Anthony, Zach Collins, Harry Giles, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, Derek Jones, Enes Kanter, and TJ Leaf. Been in the news massively because you don't know where Damian Lillard, just how happy he is, but his Instagram post a few days ago shows that he's actually committed at this stage. How do you make of just their off-season full stop? Actually,
that's such a straight, like there were so many ins and so many outs, but then like you think of every player and you're just like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't make a difference. Like, what are they actually doing? And I guess my question to you is, and I think the biggest thing, obviously, with the Portland Trailblazers is there anything at all this front office can do to improve this roster significantly? Because they made some change in the offseason, but what changed? Like, it was just kind of going sideways to similar kind of level players. I don't think there was too many upgrades there. Larry Nance Jr. I liked in that deal with the Cavs. That was as part of that 3-team deal. I thought that was really good. But outside of that, it's just sidestepping to similar guys kind of thing. I don't know.
As you said, there's a lot of names, but I mean, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, maybe like Marquise Chris, like they kind of one-dimensional guys. You're not really same kind of contracts as well, but I don't really think they can do anything significantly because I don't think anyone wants to come to Portland or deal with them. I don't think anyone's really that big on them as a first-class organisation or anything like that, and the Stars don't really want to go there.
Well, it's not necessarily a free agency thing. The biggest piece they've got there, outside of Dame, obviously, is CJ McCollum. And I just think, I just spoke about it when we were discussing the Thunder, just consistently that backcourt come playoff time, it's just too small. And you've got to try and, for me, it's just about making some kind of major change. And basically what I would be doing is, and I said it, I think, in our previews last season, is trying just to get an upgrade on CJ. Now, it doesn't have to be an upgrade necessarily from the perspective where it's a way better player than CJ McCollum. It just has to be a different kind of player to CJ McCollum. That would, and Simmons is the one, again, who's available right now. Who's the better player, Ben Simmons or CJ McCollum? They might be on a similar level. But to me, this Portland franchise has shown that with that backcourt, they just can't get too far. I mean, they made a conference finals a few years ago and got swept by the Warriors kind of thing. Like, I don't know. Again, it's this middling ground. They're a bit higher than middling ground. They're probably between 5th and 8th kind of thing. So they're a playoff team, and they still are to me as long as Dame's still there, but they're not a championship contender. And I just think they obviously probably can't package CJ up to get an uber superstar, but even if it's someone around CJ's caliber, I know that might still sound like a sidestep, but at least it's a sidestep in major players kind of thing to a different position. We're not talking about a sidestep from complete role bench players kind of thing. We're talking about a sidestep from really good, close to all-star caliber players. So, I don't know. That's just me. I would try to get Ben Simmons in, whether it's, if I have to give up CJ McCollum, then probably so be it. I think it works for both teams. If I can get Ben Simmons in without giving up CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard, I think that's a really fascinating team, but I just don't see that happening.
Well, they just need to try something different because it feels like they've done Dame and CJ because they were affected by health last year, but I don't think they can pull the health card because even when they were healthy, you just said they got to the Western Conference Finals and just got thumped by the Warriors. It was ugly to watch. So I think just trying a different approach, and I mean, I've read those names, and they're not the names that you'd think that would keep Damian Lillard happy, but apparently from what we can see, he is happy to stay. He hasn't demanded a trade or anything. So I guess looking forward to this season now, how far would they have to get for... Imagine you're Damian Lillard, I guess.
Yeah.
How far would they have to get for you to go, you know, maybe I'll keep going with this. Maybe I don't need to demand a trade somewhere.
Oh, maybe a top 4 seed, I guess. I don't know. If I'm Damian Lillard and I get to the first or second round again, it's just like, here we go again. Like, what's the point kind of thing? And for me, yeah, I just think it's probably a top 4 seed. I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding, I guess, you know, obviously across the regular season, but then in the playoffs again. And if I was the Portland front office, I'll just put it this way, I'd be really disappointed if Damian Lillard came out and requested a trade while CJ McCollum was still on the roster. If I got an inkling that Dame wasn't happy, you just got to do everything in your power to try and keep him happy. And if you get the inkling he's not happy, then just make a major change, because at the end of the day, isn't he the be all and end all of that franchise? And you just do whatever you can. Or at some point, do you just say, no, he's not the be-all and end-all of our franchise, and we're actually happy to reset here. We don't think we're winning a championship with Damian Lillard, so let's reset. Let's trade him. Maybe let's trade McCollum as well, and let's just get all these completely reset and get all these young guys in, or especially some really high top-end picks as well. I don't know. It's just as I said, they're in that period still where they're just not really going anywhere. They're just 5th to 8th kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of pressure's on Chauncey Billups. I reckon he could make or break this. How long Lillard stays. I mean, Terry Stotts they had for years, the same sort of coach, same sort of game style as well. So hopefully, if I was Chauncey Billups, I'd try something completely different, maybe different roles or whatever, and just hope, because I think it's underrated how much pressure is on him. You said that 5th to 8th range. Where did you have them exactly?
Yeah, I had them 7th. Their over-under line's 44.5. It's a no bet again for me. I don't know, because at the end of the day, Dame could be traded at some point during the season, and then it's obviously going to be an unders. With Dame there, I might say slightly over. Yeah, 7th is around that mark. I guess it's just a no bet. But yeah, I had them 7th.
I had them 5th, but I'm saying that Lillard's going to stay for the entire season, because on paper, I mean, healthy as well. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Larry Nance Jr. is definitely a defensive upgrade, and then
Nurkic as well.
So, yeah, and the bench, it's not. I don't know, but it's just a lot of the same players.
Yeah,
to be honest,
it's the same type of player, I guess. At the end of the day,
caliber of players.
Yeah, it's going to be super fascinating. It's going to be one of the big storylines, I guess, of this season is how the Blazers go and whether or not they can keep Damian Lillard happy. But next off, we will finish it with the very good regular season team, like they always are. That's the Utah Jazz. All right, I'm trying to keep it together right now. We obviously take a little bit of a break between teams, and I just jumped on Facebook, and the first thing that comes up is a published article, I guess, from the Mercury that is going through Tasmania's sexiest suburbs. Like, this is the leading newspaper in Tasmania, and going through Tasmania's sexiest suburbs. I don't know. I live in Rosetta, and Rosetta's not on the list, so that's slightly disappointing. But anyway, let's go back. Let's go back to the basketball. We'll finish off here with the Utah Jazz. Their ins and outs. Rudy Gay comes in. Eric Pascal from my Warriors. Hassan Whiteside. They re-sign Mike Conley. Out goes Derek Favors and Ersan Ilyasova. Their over-under line is 53.5. Look, I said before there that they are a great regular season team, and I can see that being the case again. Now, where's the improvement come from for this team, especially come playoff time and going deep into the season? And my question for you is, you always have a crack at shooting guards and Donovan Mitchell. What's his ceiling for you, and is what caliber player is Donovan Mitchell on a championship team? Can he be the best player? Is he the second best player? Is he maybe even the third best player on a championship team? Where does Donovan Mitchell sit in the pecking order of championship teams, I guess, for you?
I was stoked when you gave me this question because I think he's a perfect example as to for my sentiment that I'm putting out that shooting guards can't carry a team. And I think Donovan Mitchell, he's quite limited when it comes to playoffs. He's not an elite defender in any regard. His playmaking is okay. And I remember when so many people were comparing him to Dwayne Wade, who's one of my favorite players. Actually, the first jersey I ever got was a Dwayne Wade jersey, but Dwayne Wade was like all defensive first team, incredibly clutch. Donovan Mitchell, I think when it comes to playoffs, he's quite limited in terms of what he can do. I mean, when it comes to crunch time, I guess, in the playoffs, you're not really worried about anyone else in the team scoring. So if you put all your defensive attention on him, I think it's pretty easy. I think I might be being dramatic. I think he's a 3 on a championship team. I think you need an elite big, I think, because you've just mentioned CJ, how small he is, and Donovan Mitchell, I think, can be exposed a little bit. So they've paid him huge. They paid him number 1 type of money. And I guess you're Utah. You're not getting crazy free agents coming down there. And I think you've drafted well. I don't think he was even that high of a pick.
Yeah,
so
13th pick,
you just 13th pick. Okay, well, there it is. And he was already a little bit older when he came into the NBA, I believe. I think he wasn't a one and done type of prospect. So in terms of where he's going to
have to fact check that. I don't know if maybe we're getting confused with Davion Mitchell, who's just been drafted. In fact, I'm going to look that up right now.
Let me know how you go. But yeah, I think he's quite limited in I'm sure he can get his scoring, maybe percentages up, but I don't see, he doesn't have that natural defensive style or natural playmaking about him. So yeah, I think at number 3 is where I go. Are you big on Donovan Mitchell just as a talent, like in terms of the best young talents in the NBA? Do you think he's right in the upper echelon?
Yeah, look, I don't think he's necessarily, he's a good young talent, but again, he doesn't have the upside because at the end of the day, he's 6'2" at the end of the day. So, yeah, I don't know. You're actually right. He played 2 seasons in college. So you're actually right. I wasn't 100% sure about that, but well played. I just, at 6'2", you just don't have that necessary upside. And I just look at where the improvement comes from Donovan Mitchell. And there are a couple of aspects. I think defensively, I think he's got some athleticism, which can enable him to be better on defense than what he is. Secondly, I don't really like his shooting percentages from 3 necessarily. He obviously takes quite a high volume, but his shooting percentages, I think, across the floor from the field and 3-point range can probably improve. I'm just having a look at it here. Across the last 2 seasons, he's gone 36% from 3, and then 38% from 3, which isn't too bad. But if you look at his field goal percentages, 45 and 44. Like, you kind of want to be trying to get that closer to 50, I guess. So I guess, yeah, the efficiency for him is probably something you can improve upon, and also the defense, as I speak about. But I think your call of him being the 3rd best player on a championship team isn't that far off the mark. He's certainly not the best player on a championship team because it's not just shooting guards. It's point guards as well at that height, at 6'2" kind of thing. Just don't win you NBA championships. I mean, unless you're a freakish player like Steph Curry, who's top 2 point guard of all time. We know that, Chris Paul just got close, I guess, is probably the most important player. But even they didn't win the championship at the end of the day. So if you look throughout history, the NBA as a league has been predominantly early history a big man's league. And then more recent times, I guess, 21st century, more modern basketball, we're going to those wings that I always speak about, and even potentially back to the centers and the big men, which obviously you've been getting around the last 12 months or so, saying it's a bigs league. It's certainly never really been a 6'2" guards league. That's just basketball for you. That's just how that's how it is. So yeah, at the end of the day, he's not the best player on a championship team, and right now he's the best player in Utah. So they're very talented and very deep, but for me, they're not a championship contender, to be totally honest. I just don't see it with Donovan Mitchell as your best player.
Well, they weren't only just the number 1 seed in the West, they're the number 1 seed in the entire NBA. And obviously they have a few ins here and there, but do you see any upside, like pretty much any improvement? Because I've got them top of the West again this year, but in terms of, because you saw what happened to them at the Clippers, they couldn't even play their defensive player of the year on the court, which is just funny to say. Yeah, it's kind of funny to say in a sentence. So do you see any upside, any difference to the Utah Jazz this year?
No. And again, so you've got them first, I've got them first. Like, we've got them first in the regular season. They're a great regular season team.
Bad.
They might win 60 games almost. Very hard to win games as an opposing team in Utah. They're a very good team, but they're one of these teams which, again, I'll say it, Donovan Mitchell isn't the best player on a championship team, and I think they've got enough depth of experienced talent that I don't know if you can just package some of these guys up and try and find someone that can actually lead you to a championship kind of thing and be the best player on a championship team. Again, that player's probably not available right now, but yeah, that's what I'd be trying to do, because right now they're just doing the same thing, which is what they've done for the past few seasons, where they're a great regular season team and then come playoff time, they don't have enough high-end talent. They don't have that top 10 player, like I spoke about the Miami Heat on the last episode with you guys. I said Miami don't have a top 10 player, and that limits them. It's the same with Utah. Come playoff time, the lack of a top 10 player just puts a ceiling on, I think, where you can go.
I think that's actually a pretty tough position to be in as a franchise, because I feel like you're almost in your window. Like, you've paid the big contracts for Rudy Gobert, you've paid big contracts for Mitchell, you just paid Conley, who's an older guard, and I don't think anyone's coming there. So you're almost in your championship window, but at the same time, if you have a repeat of this season, maybe
it's almost like Portland. It's almost like Portland, where you've just got to try and change things up. And for me, the one guy is Conley. I like Mike Conley. He's had a great NBA career. It's just got to a point where I want an upgrade on him. I want someone better. Bogdanovic, not a great player, very good player, serviceable NBA player. I want an upgrade there. Like, Gobert, for how good he is defensively during the regular season, as you said, we saw during the Clippers series, he got played off the floor when the Clippers went small ball kind of thing. There's just too many issues there and too many players on that roster that are really good players. And the hard thing is, when you finish first in the regular season, you feel kind of bound to those players because they've taken you to that position. But at some point,
if they're winning awards,
at some point you've got to not feel so connected to them, I guess, and maybe make a harsh call or two and trade out one of these guys to get a player that is top 10, top 15 caliber, or has the potential to get to that point.
It's hard. I mean, you just said they're tough to beat out in their home. They've got Quinn Snyder's a top coach. They've got Rudy Gobert is always in Defensive Player of the Year. You've got the sixth man of the year, but you still can't get over the hump. So I reckon, they almost feel like I'll have to just keep running this back. Yeah, they're going to have to do a drastic call soon.
I think this is their last attempt with this group. If I'm the front office, I'm having
that's fair.
one more crack. Keep this roster together as they've had. Have one more crack. If they, finish first again, which we both have them doing, and then blow out of the playoffs in like the second round, you have to do something different, don't you? I know Donovan Mitchell's young, and there's some time, I guess, but there shouldn't be any waiting around, I don't think. But 53.5. Sorry, go on.
You just don't want because I'd look sideways at what just happened with James Harden in Houston. You look at what's happening in Philly. You just don't want that disgruntled mess to happen. So I reckon out of fear, I'd just pull the trigger and say, "No, I'm gonna trade you before you do anything bad to me."
Well, on who though? Donovan Mitchell, or is this someone else? Because Donovan Mitchell, I guess, is that star player that could get disgruntled if his team continues to come first in the regular season and then just doesn't do anything in the playoffs.
Well, Rudy Gobert and Mitchell are your two people, so I reckon, you gotta. I think there'll be some hard talks. I reckon if it's a repeat of the season.
I think Gobert's the one where he's great defensively, but he's limited offensively, and he's limited even defensively come playoff time when teams go small. So, as good as he is in the regular season, have you got to kind of look at him and just think, I don't like paying blokes that are just defensively orientated and have no offensive capability outside of putbacks and lobs kind of thing. I just don't like paying those blokes. And I know when he got that money, I understood it from a Utah perspective, but I wouldn't have done it personally. I wouldn't have given him near $200 million or whatever. So I don't know, at some point that you move that on and you just try something different with a more skilled offensive big man. I don't know what it is. That's obviously the style they go with, and it works really well during the regular season, but proof will be in the pudding whether they can finally do anything come playoff time, but neither of us have them doing that, I don't think, at this stage. Over under 53.5 wins for you. Probably over if they're finishing first?
Yeah, over, I reckon, with health. They're tough, a regular season team, but
Yeah, I've got them over, and it's probably, I've said no bet for the last four teams. I'm probably not going to bet on this one either, but this is probably the most confident I am of the five teams, over 53.5. I could see them going 58-24. They're just going to be super hard to beat at home. They're going to be super hard to beat in general because they've got great depth of talent. I mean, they had two of the top three in the finishing for Sixth Man of the Year last year in Clarkson, and
That's
obviously
right, Jingles.
and Joey Jingles there as well. So Joey Jingles, I'm not sure anyone's ever called him that, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't think that.
Joey Ingles, yeah, whatever. Anyway, how about we come back next and we'll let you guys know if we do have any best bets for this episode. We've just conferred off camera and agreed on the fact that we don't have a best bet for this episode. And I always tell you guys that at the end of the day, we're not going to give you a bet for the sake of it. We're going to be straight with you, and being straight with you in this episode is saying that we don't like any of these over-under bets. And even I think Utah might be $1.36. They'll win the division, but you're not taking on $1.36. That's not worth it. So yeah, no best bet for this episode, but we've got some pretty exciting episodes hopefully coming up, Lee, over the next few days.
I'm really excited, mate. Obviously, the Atlantic Division is next, big powerhouses, and we've actually got a few of our mates coming on who are avid fans of their franchise. So we've got to hit them with some hard questions, and keen to see a few new faces on here giving their takes. So, mate, I'm really excited for this. And yeah, maybe not exciting like division, but I reckon heaps of storylines are going to come out of this Northwest Division that we just talked about. I reckon one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait for the biased bullshit that we might get in the next episode with a few blokes on. Shall be very interesting, but it'll probably be entertaining to say the least. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Star and Scrub NBA podcast. Remember to check us out across all our social media channels.